I never thought I'd be that guy. You know, the man who walks into his own house, into his own bedroom, and sees his wife in his bed with his friend. I always believed this kind of thing happened to other people. But on that day, my world fell apart in a way I couldn't have imagined. It was a Friday. I came home early, a surprise for my wife. I wanted to whisk her away for the weekend. We'd been distant lately, and I thought maybe a getaway could rekindle what we were losing. My heart raced as I opened the door, excited, hopeful even. I never expected the sight that greeted me. There they were. She looked at me, not with guilt, not with shame, but with this smug, almost victorious grin. And he, my so-called friend, barely managed to pull the blanket over himself. The room felt cold, even though it was summer. Time slowed. I stood frozen at the doorway, my mind struggling to process what my eyes saw. She spoke first. "Oh, you're home early," she said, like I was the one who had done something wrong. My friend avoided eye contact, his face red, embarrassed, or maybe just caught. I don't know which was worse. I felt anger, betrayal, heartbreak, all at once. But then, something clicked in my mind. I realized this wasn't just a one-time mistake. This had been planned. She wasn't sorry. In fact, what she said next made my blood run cold. "Well, maybe now we can stop pretending, huh?" I never thought I'd be that guy. You know, the man who walks into his own house, into his own bedroom, and sees his wife in his bed with his friend. I always believed this kind of thing happened to other people. But on that day, my world fell apart in a way I couldn't have imagined. It was a Friday. I came home early, a surprise from my wife. I wanted to whisk her away for the weekend. We'd been distant lately, and I thought maybe a getaway could rekindle what we were losing. My heart raced as I opened the door, excited, hopeful even. I never expected the sight that greeted me. There they were. She looked at me, not with guilt, not with shame, but with this smug, almost victorious grin. And he, my so-called friend, barely managed to pull the blanket over himself. The room felt cold, even though it was summer. Time slowed. I stood frozen at the doorway, my mind struggling to process what my eyes saw. She spoke first. "Oh, you're home early," she said, like I was the one who had done something wrong. My friend avoided eye contact, his face red, embarrassed, or maybe just caught. I don't know which was worse. I felt anger, betrayal, heartbreak, all at once. But then something clicked in my mind. I realized this wasn't just a one-time mistake. This had been planned. She wasn't sorry. In fact, what she said next made my blood run cold. "Well, maybe now we can stop pretending, huh?" That's when I knew. I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't beg. Instead, I turned around, walked calmly to my drawer, and grabbed my passport. If she wanted to destroy what we had, she could enjoy the ashes. I was done. I left that room without another word. I could hear her calling after me, trying to sound confident, like she still had the upper hand. But inside, I think she was surprised, maybe even scared, because I didn't explode. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out, passport in hand. And that silence? That was more powerful than any shouting match. I went to the guest room, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the bed. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I stared at my passport. This little booklet. It wasn't just a document now. It was my ticket to freedom, to peace, to reclaiming myself. And as the weight of the betrayal started sinking in, I realized something else. They'd planned this. Not just the affair, but what came after. I remembered the small comments my wife had made in recent weeks, about how our house felt too big for just the two of us, how she wondered what it'd be like to start fresh somewhere else. And my so-called friend. He'd been hanging around more, always ready to lend a hand, always too helpful. Now it made sense. She wanted me gone. Not just from the house, but from the picture entirely. Maybe she thought if I broke down, if I fought, she could paint me as the bad guy. But instead, I was planning my own escape. And it would be nothing like what she expected. That night, I didn't sleep. I quietly packed a bag. Essentials only. My laptop, documents, a few clothes, and my savings hidden in a place she didn't know about. I wasn't going to stay and be humiliated. I wasn't going to give her or my ex-friend the satisfaction of seeing me broken. The next morning, before the sun came up, I left. As the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, I stepped out of the house that had once been our home. I closed the door gently behind me. No slamming, no dramatic exit. Just quiet resolve. I didn't leave a note, didn't leave a message. Let her wake up and wonder where I'd gone. Let him wonder if I was about to ruin the fantasy they'd built behind my back. I headed straight for the airport. I'd booked a one-way ticket overnight, using miles I'd been saving for years. The destination. A city I loved but where no one knew me. A place to start over without the shadow of betrayal hanging over my head. Sitting at the gate, I finally allowed myself to breathe. I wasn't running away. I was reclaiming my life. But as I waited for my flight, I started thinking, should I just disappear quietly? Should I let them believe they'd won? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. No, they didn't deserve an easy out. They didn't deserve to slip into their new life together without facing what they'd done. So before I boarded that plane, I sent one message. Just one. To his wife. I told her everything. The truth, no exaggerations, no revenge fantasies. Just facts, dates, places, screenshots I'd quietly gathered in the hours since I'd found them. And then I turned off my phone. I imagined the chaos that would unfold. The lies unraveling, the smug looks wiped clean off their faces. And I felt free. That was the moment I realized. The best revenge wasn't rage or destruction. It was living well, and letting the truth, and their own choices, destroy what they'd built on lies. By the time my plane touched down, my phone was filled with notifications. Voicemails, text messages, and emails, all from numbers I recognized, and some I didn't. But I didn't listen. I didn't read. I'd already decided. Their chaos wasn't mine to manage anymore. But a few days later, curiosity got the better of me. I checked my messages, and what I found confirmed what I had suspected. Maybe even hoped. His wife had gone nuclear. I'd underestimated her strength. She didn't cry, beg, or plead with him to stay. She kicked him out, the very night I sent her the truth. From the messages she left me, I could feel the mix of fury and heartbreak, but mostly gratitude. She thanked me for my honesty. Said she deserved to know. Said she wished she'd seen it sooner. As for my wife, or should I say ex-wife, her tone shifted fast. The smug, self-assured woman who'd thought she could trade me in for a newer, wealthier model was suddenly desperate. Her texts were filled with apologies, promises, and pleas to come back, to talk, to work through this together. She painted herself as a victim of circumstance, of weakness. But the one thing she didn't have anymore was my sympathy. And the best part? The big-shot friend she betrayed me with, the one she thought would be her ticket to a better life, he was done with her too. His wife had exposed him publicly, social media posts, family group messages. His career? In shambles. His marriage? Over. I didn't lift a finger beyond sharing the truth. They destroyed themselves. And I realized then, karma doesn't need help. It just needs a little truth to set it in motion. In the weeks that followed, I felt like I could finally breathe again. For the first time in years, my mind wasn't clouded by suspicion, hurt, or anger. I was free, and I was determined to use that freedom wisely. I rented a small apartment in a city I'd always dreamed of living in but never dared to move to because she didn't want to leave her comfort zone. I started fresh. New job, new friends, and a new routine that had nothing to do with walking on eggshells or constantly trying to be enough for someone who never valued me. Meanwhile, the fallout from their choices only grew. Word spread quickly in their circle. My so-called friend lost major clients at work because his reputation was in ruins. Turns out, when you build your success on lies, it crumbles fast. His wife filed for divorce within a week of finding out. And from what I heard through mutual acquaintances, my ex-wife tried to cling to him, but he wanted nothing to do with her once the fantasy of their affair turned into the reality of public shame. I'll admit, there were moments when I felt tempted to gloat, to show up at gatherings just to see the look on their faces, but I didn't. I realized their punishment was far worse without me adding fuel to the fire. Every bridge they burned, every door closed on them, that was karma doing its work. And me? I focused on healing, on becoming a version of myself that I was proud of, not defined by betrayal but by resilience. I started therapy, picked up old hobbies I'd abandoned, and spent my evenings exploring my new city instead of sitting at home wondering where my wife was. Just when I thought I'd finally put everything behind me, they came crawling back. It started with a message, a long, rambling text from my ex-wife. She wrote about how much she missed me, how everything had spiraled out of control, and how she realized I was the only one who truly cared for her. She even had the nerve to say she forgave me for leaving so suddenly, as if I had betrayed her. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a mix of disbelief and pity. This was the same woman who had humiliated me, who had brought another man, my so-called friend, into our bed, and now she wanted to act like none of it happened? But it didn't stop there. A few days later, he reached out too. My ex-friend sent me an awkward, half-hearted apology, saying how he'd made a mistake and how he hoped we could all just move on. Apparently, his life had fallen apart since I exposed their affair. His wife had taken him to court, his career was in shambles, and he was facing debts he couldn't repay. Their messages didn't make me angry. If anything, they confirmed what I already knew. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry they got caught and were paying the price for it. I didn't reply. I didn't owe them anything. Not my words, not my attention, not my forgiveness. Instead, I focused on my future. I had built something beautiful for myself, piece by piece, and I wasn't about to let their desperation pull me back into their mess. After cutting off all contact with my ex-wife and ex-friend, I felt an odd sense of peace. But at the same time, there was a part of me that couldn't stop thinking about how many others might be going through the same kind of betrayal, feeling just as lost and broken as I once did. That thought sparked something in me, a desire to turn my pain into purpose. I started small. I joined an online support group for people recovering from infidelity. At first, I just read their stories, nodding along as strangers poured out their heartbreak and confusion. But soon, I found myself replying to posts, offering words of comfort and sharing parts of my own experience. And the responses I received were overwhelming. People thanked me for helping them feel seen, for giving them hope that they too could heal and move forward. What began as a way to cope slowly grew into something much bigger. I started a blog, writing about everything, from the raw pain of discovering betrayal to the small daily victories of rebuilding my life. I shared the steps that helped me move on, the lessons I learned about self-respect, boundaries, and resilience. To my surprise, the blog gained followers fast. People wrote to me, telling me my words helped them get through their darkest days. Helping others didn't erase the betrayal I suffered, but it gave it meaning. I wasn't just a victim of what happened. I became a guide for those still trapped in the storm. And in lifting others up, I lifted myself too. As my blog grew and I continued supporting others, something within me started to change. The bitterness that had once consumed me began to fade. I didn't notice it at first, but gradually I was waking up each morning feeling lighter, more hopeful. I had been so focused on helping others heal that, without realizing it, I was healing myself. One day, I received a message from someone who had been reading my blog for months. Her name was Emily. She wrote to thank me for sharing my story, saying that it gave her the strength to leave a toxic relationship of her own. Her words were filled with warmth and sincerity, and for the first time in a long while I felt a connection that wasn't tainted by betrayal or pain. We kept talking, at first through messages, then video calls. There was no rush, no pressure. We were two people who had been hurt, gently learning to trust again. Emily wasn't just kind. She was understanding in a way only someone who had walked through fire could be. Our conversations became the highlight of my days. We spoke about everything, our struggles, our hopes, our fears. Slowly, I started to believe that maybe, just maybe, not everyone was out to hurt me. Maybe love, the real kind, was still possible. Eventually, we decided to meet in person. That first meeting was nerve-wracking, but also beautiful. There were no games, no masks, just two honest souls, scarred but strong, daring to hope again. Meeting Emily in person felt like a breath of fresh air after being trapped underwater for too long. We spent hours talking at a quiet cafe, sharing stories, laughter, and even some tears. It wasn't perfect. Both of us carried scars from our pasts, but it was real, and that meant everything. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt like I wasn't alone. We started spending more time together, slowly building something meaningful. But as anyone who's been hurt deeply knows, the past has a way of trying to claw its way back when you least expect it. One evening, while we were out for dinner, my phone lit up with a message that made my heart sink. It was from my ex-wife. After all this time, she dared to reach out. She wrote a long-winded apology, filled with excuses. How she made a mistake, how she missed me, how she wished we could start over. For a moment, I felt that old anger bubble up. But then, I looked across the table at Emily, who was smiling at me. Unaware of the storm brewing inside, I realized I didn't need to respond. I didn't need to let the past pull me back into darkness. Later that night, I told Emily about the message. Instead of anger or jealousy, she simply took my hand and said, "I'm proud of you for moving forward." That simple sentence meant more than any apology my ex could ever give. The past had tried to haunt me, but I was stronger now. With Emily by my side, I knew I had finally closed that painful chapter for good. Life started to feel peaceful again, something I hadn't experienced in years. Emily and I took things slow, not rushing into anything, because we both knew the value of healing. We shared long walks, quiet evenings, and dreams about what the future might look like. I found myself smiling more, sleeping better, and waking up excited for the day ahead. For the first time in so long, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for betrayal to strike. With Emily, I felt safe. And more importantly, I trusted myself again. My judgment, my choices, my ability to spot red flags. But life, as always, had one last twist for me. One day, I received a formal letter. My ex-wife and my former best friend were getting divorced. Their so-called perfect life had crumbled. Apparently, after the initial rush of their affair wore off, they realized they didn't really like each other that much. There were arguments over money, infidelity, again, imagine that, and endless blame. It should have made me feel vindicated. And I'll admit for a split second it did. But mostly I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction. Just a quiet relief that I wasn't part of their mess anymore. Emily and I celebrated that night. Not because of their downfall, but because we knew we'd built something different. Something honest. Looking back, I see now that betrayal wasn't the end of my story. It was the painful beginning of a better chapter. A chapter where I learned what real love, real trust, and real strength look like.